Welcome everybody to tonight's Bridge Talks with Karen Ward, who will be our guest speaker tonight. What I wanted to do is kind of kick off by setting a little bit of the scene of what we're going to be talking about tonight, because it's a huge subject. Brand personality, one, that's a big topic in itself. Promise is another area that we could probably talk on forever, especially knowing my dating record. And your people. Okay, so when I was looking at the whole topic and getting my head around it, it brought me back to this very early question that I remember from university days, back to, I think it was Psych 101, when somebody asked us that question, what is personality? Anybody here want to take a crack at what is personality? We all have one, hopefully. We experience it every day. But how often do we actually stop and think about it?
It's what makes you unique.
Makes you unique? Sure, because there's only one of you. And when you look at the matrix of your own individual personality, there can be only one. And so then we begin to look at that, when we get inside personality, it originally comes from the Latin word persona, which means mask. And it's the mask that we give the world. And it is a combination of our traits, our attributes, our ideas, our behaviors, and how we project those externally. And then it actually links into our status and how we feel about ourselves. It links to our goals, our motivation. So when you begin to actually get inside a word, such like personality, how big a word is it? And how much it drives the world around us. Then I had to begin to say, okay, well, let's look at brand then. And when we look at the definition of brand personality, it's really no different. Because a brand is processed in our right brain, it's a process emotionally. We have a relationship with it. We love brands, we hate brands, they make us happy, they let us down sometimes. So when we actually begin to look at a brand personality, it's giving our brands the human characteristics. It gives it something of personality, and it's the thing that we relate to as people when connecting to a brand. So now as I began to explore a little bit further, beginning to think about it, how do we begin to break down the organizations that we feel most connected to? What is the personality that you like in individual brands? Does anybody here have a favorite brand? Who here has a favorite brand, the one that you would say, yeah, that's the one I would stand up for? Hugh, what's your favorite brand?
It's a good expansion brand.
Well, I'm going to ask you to mention one. One brand.
Different brands give you different things for different moods, different time in your life.
Sure. Is there anyone that is you're most connected to at the moment?
At the moment, I'm feeling most connected to Bridge because
Now, there was an ad. Yeah. That was a plan. Sure. But as I go through all the brands that I connect with on a daily basis, I thought, what connects me to them? Sometimes it's consistency. I don't even like Starbucks personally. It's not one coffee that I would go out of my way to get. But I remember once when I was in Beijing on work, and I came into the hotel in this really kind of very congested city, and the first thing I saw from my hotel was a Starbucks, and I went straight to it. And I thought, I'm just in Clapham now. Because it's all about consistency. So when we actually begin to look inside brands, they do have personality. But that's how we register them in our brain. So I kind of thought, wouldn't it be nice if all brands looked like this? Just happy and floating around, very psychedelic. Wouldn't that be the dream brand? However, we have to engage with brands every single day, and it's about the personality that we connect with. But as organizations, we need to begin to understand what that outward promise looks like to people, because that is what they're connecting to, and then how we connect that back to our culture, because that is who's going to have to deliver what it looks like. Because if I sent that message out as my brand promise, then everybody that represents that brand, if this was the brand, would need to be very colorful and bright and happy all the time in order to create a connection with the promise. So looking at brands, we kind of break them down into certain categories, that personality traits that certain brands might have. Excitement is often one of them. And excitement translates into carefree, spirited, youthful. If I was to throw that brand personality out to all of you, what brand might come to mind? Russell?
Red Bull.
Red Bull. Yeah, Red Bull.
Google.
Google. Sure. So as you begin to look at that personality, you begin to see it emerge in the representation of your mind. Sincerity, genuine, kind, family-oriented, thoughtful. Anybody?
John Lewis.
Who?
John Lewis.
John Lewis, yeah, very much. Yeah. And as I begin to look at those attributes, that would be the attributes that I would want in a person, and therefore the attributes that I would connect to in a brand. Ruggedness, rough, tough, outdoors, athletic.
Cheap.
North Face. Jeep.
Wait,
North Face.
North Face. What?
Jeep.
Jeep, yeah. So again, you begin to start to see the emerge of brand personality simply by the trigger word, because that is what it's bringing alive every single day. And if I was to look at even a Jeep advert, that's what it's saying to me, because that is the personality that it is presenting itself as. How about this one? Competent, successful, accomplished, influential, a leader. Virgin, very much so. Because that is what you're connecting to, the virgin personality. You know, when I first looked at that, there were several banks that came to my mind originally. If I was to look back maybe 5 or 10 years ago, how much they stood as leaders, but how fragile they became when they did not live up to their brand promise or their personality. Sophistication, elegance, prestigious, and even sometimes pretentious. Chanel. Espresso. Nespresso, yeah. You know, and again, we can start to see that personality alive. I can see that in a person, and therefore I can see it in a brand as its personality. So when we begin to project our personality outwards, we have to always remember that brand and culture are two sides of the same coin. And as we project that outwardly, that's our promise. But it has to be wrapped up in a personality, because that is the part that gets registered with other human beings as they begin to build a relationship. But this is what our culture has to be connected to every single day, and how they deliver on that promise. So when I begin to break down each one of these things, and I look at the psychology side of what is personality when I'm looking at a human, it all interrelates to our values, very much like business. Your personal set of values are the things that drive your belief system. And that belief system is what drives my behavior. And those behaviors are my core actions that I deliver on. And from that creates experiences of others. Because if I was to go back to any of those brand personalities or people personalities, it's the output at the other end, which is the experience that you achieve when dealing with them. And that's what I love about brand, because brand is alive. It really is truly alive, because that is the way my brain processes it. It processes it as a relationship, and it's underpinned always by the personality and the promise that we put out there. So behind the scenes of the personality, when we get behind the scenes of it, sometimes they can be quirky and fun. I had to take this picture while in the Virgin toilet. And the interesting thing is, I probably was on about 4 or 5 Virgin trains, and then anytime I went into the toilet and I saw this, I thought, that is so Virgin. But the other day we had a meeting in Alton, and we took the Southwest train. I think it's Southwest that goes there to Alton. And they had a similar one of these, and it just didn't feel legitimate. It didn't quite match the brand personality that I saw. They tried to copycat what Virgin did, and it worked very well for Virgin. But Southwest Trains doesn't really have the personality that carried it off. And I felt quite creepy in their toilet. All of a sudden, it wasn't funny anymore. It was just wrong. And then I was at Boots the other day, and I really loved how Coke has come alive with Ab Fab. Because this is a personality of itself, and anybody that is part of that Ab Fab era, show of hands, the good old days. Yeah. Now, none of you new kids who just watched it on YouTube. We're talking about where you used to have to get it on a VHS tape. Yeah, you ever heard of that? Yeah. But again, it's a really nice link to what Coke is trying to express as a personality, which is all about being fun, being alive, being a bit quirky, which is not always the brand personality that it stayed with when it began, and it's breaking away from its traditional sense, even in the way its packaging is produced. Now this is one of my old favorites, and I wanted to bring this because several years ago, 5 years ago now, I did a lecture series across Taiwan on global brand strategies. And this was one of the videos that I used, and it's always stayed with me as a commercial, but also as a brand personality. And does anybody here use Dove?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what words would you say about Dove then? Empowering women.
It smells nice, does a good job.
Smells nice, does a good job. Yeah. Functional. Yeah. So it's functional, smells nice, does a good job. It's very empowering. It's very clean. It's fresh. It doesn't have high levels of perfume and content, and they, as a brand, the way they created their personality was very much slightly controversial in respect of the industry in which it works in, but really stood out for what it believes in. So this was a commercial that I played. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but.
Greg, please camera's rolling and the recording sound. Let's play it.
And for you to say the one thing that stood out as part of their brand personality is empowering women. And that's one of the things where I, as a commercial, I think connected a lot about brand personality, of how it projects outwardly, but actually how it takes on board what it truly believes in and makes that as part of its mission. So what we have to recognize as part of this outward brand personality, it's trying to understand what we put our people in as a culture in every day. Because for me to deliver on my personal integrity, I control all three of these things. I control the truth, therefore, what I promise to you, I control that. I control the honesty, and that's my ability to deliver upon it. And I also control my commitment, and that's my action. But that's because I control my own personality. However, as a culture and an organization, when we are delivering on brand personality, the one thing that the people in our organizations don't have control over is the truth. Because that truth sits in the eye of the beholder, it sits with the marketing team, and it sits with the outward projection. But that's why the other two are so important in terms of delivery. But we have to allow our people to understand what the personality is. We have to engage the culture in the organization in what is that outward promise, and therefore their ability to deliver on it and have better understanding of what the personality promises, and the commitment and their engagement in how they are going to deliver on it every day. So delivering on our personality and promises, and both our internal and external customers will unite. When we connect with that true brand promise and that true brand personality and engage the people in our organization to be part of that, then that to me is where the two do unite. Okay, so I really wanted to just give you a little quick introduction about some of the thoughts for the evening. And now I'm going to pass you over to Karen,